Now, Texas officials say at least 50 migrants are dead after being trapped in a truck that had no working air conditioning or water. It was discovered near San Antonio, where temperatures have been over 100 degrees. 16 survivors, including 4 children, were rushed to nearby hospitals for heat stroke and exhaustion. Police detained 3 people in connection with the incident. But Texas Governor Greg Abbott is pointing the finger at the president's border policies, tweeting, "These deaths are on Biden." Meanwhile, we are also learning that the administration has quietly signed a 5-year lease on an abandoned school to house thousands of unaccompanied migrant children in North Carolina. Sean, I come to you first on this. The state's 8 Republican House lawmakers have written a letter to the president saying this contradicts what you said previously about these minors. This comes as a complete surprise to us and our constituencies. And they point out that in addition to the lack of transparency by this administration, they say due to your failures to secure the southern border, every state, including North Carolina, is now suffering from the impacts of this border crisis, especially those children.
Well, of course, you don't have just illegal migrants staying in Texas, Arizona, and California. They're being shipped throughout the country. But this story of 48 migrants dying in a trailer is horrific. The inhumanity of an open border. So it's not just the death in trailers. It's the drugs that come across our border. Young Americans die. You have the sex trafficking that happens. And I think the Democrats do this. I'm trying to wrap my head around it, and maybe Jessica will speak to this, but is this about politics? Are they trying to win votes with open borders? Because if you look at the Hispanic vote that has a 24% approval rating for Joe Biden, you would say, listen, this is not what Hispanics care about. They actually want jobs. They want lower gas prices. They want prices to go down in the grocery store. They hate CRT. They hate the transgender teaching in schools. They actually want to have schools teach math, history, science. And so, again, I think Democrats are getting this wrong. And if Joe Biden would just go back to securing the border, maybe stop suing on Remain in Mexico and actually let that Trump policy stay, we might have a little more secure border and less people flowing into the country and less tragedy.
I'll let you answer that. And also folding in, if I may, we've learned that since early 2017, 1 of every 3 people held at Border Patrol facilities is a minor, right? This is coming out new, that this is new data that is essentially confirmed that out of almost 2 million people detained, more than 650,000 were under 18. So the argument, just carrying the ball a little further, is that with these compassionate policies at the southern border, they're actually so cruel because no one is using them more than those cartels that are taking advantage of these migrant children that now are being absorbed by North Carolina and throughout the country by an administration that refuses to admit or be transparent about any of their decision making.
I wouldn't go that far to say that they're refusing to be transparent about any of their decision making. And no, we're not doing it to win votes. There's a core constituency of the Democratic Party on the far left that does think that we should have an open border, and they're very open about that. That is not Joe Biden's position. It is not the vice president's position on it or the bulk of the party. There are a number of outspoken Democrats, mostly border Democrats, who have said absolutely leave Remain in Mexico in place until we have a good plan to get us out of it, and kind of breathed a sigh of relief when a judge said, actually, this has to continue. And it seems like the Mexican president wants to work with us more on that. And obviously, he's incredibly upset about this humanitarian disaster with these 48 dead so far in that truck. In terms of unaccompanied minors coming across the border, it is a relief to hear you say that, since I always hear it's just single men, right? That's who's coming over, and they're coming to, destroy the country or whatever, kind of fear-mongering about it.
Who's saying that?
What? That's what nonstop footage that I have seen coming out of right-wing channels about this is who's coming into your homes. This is who's coming across the border. And it is children, and people are in desperate situations, and they know that children are not going to be turned back. They also do have a right to claim asylum here, and they should go through the system, and they should be processed, and it needs to be done better. I am not an advocate for an open border system in any way.
But this is Joe Biden's policy, right? I mean, Joe Biden is the president.
Of course he's the president.
And when he sues on Remain in Mexico, he wants Remain in Mexico to go away. He's not doing anything to secure the border, and he could. I agree with you on the far left constituency, but Joe Biden has embodied that far leftism as opposed to the border Democrats who are like, listen, this is horrible policy. Change it, Joe Biden. You won't.
I am more in that camp that says we need a solution to this before you get rid of this policy. But I would add that there's a bit of strangeness around these headlines that you see. It was even from this: open borders, just seized, pounds and pounds of fentanyl. Is the border open then? Or hundreds of thousands of migrants detained? Does that make it an open border? It seems like Border Patrol is doing their job, and they are stopping
1.5 million illegal border crossings in fiscal year 2022 alone. It's a record. Yes, the border is open, and here on Outnumbered, we've covered the children in a way that I would argue no other network has, because there has been an expose on CBS. There was one, I believe it was at NBC, about emergency intake facilities, about little boys complaining that they were getting feathers and bloody and raw chicken in Joe Biden's America in these facilities, kids on suicide watch lists, girls aged 13 to 17 urinating in bags. Where's MSNBC? I thought you guys were great humanitarians. Where's CNN? Where's Joe Biden? Why isn't the media allowed? We cover here on Outnumbered, I'm proud that we do on our show, kids crossing the border. But this is the humanitarian Joe Biden America, where fentanyl kills Americans, where illegal immigrants cross the border, where children languish away in emergency intake facilities and 50 migrants die in what is the biggest mass atrocity we've seen on our southern border. Well done, humanitarians. Good job, Kamala.
That's right. And that's why multiple states' attorneys generals, in addition to district attorneys, have raised that alarm. And all of these fronts, right? They've said these children are the ones that are being absolutely overlooked, neglected, sexually assaulted, with the dearth of background checks that people need to go under. And I think there's a level of responsibility this administration absolutely holds, but because they are being discarded. The cartels are discarding these people. They are discarding these kids. So too is this administration. When 50 people die in a tractor trailer and that's somehow acceptable, that's going to be ignored. I'm sure we will not hear one peep from anyone in this administration. And the fact that fentanyl, as we now know, is the leading unnatural cause of death for American kids, 18 and 25, let alone those coming across the border. Dagan, I want to play a clip for you from one of the sheriffs down there who reacted to the fentanyl situation. We reference it in our teas. Stand by. We'll watch.
Come Monday morning, I learned of this release and I was infuriated. I could not believe that we had 150,000 fentanyl pills, one of the most dangerous epidemics that is facing our nation today, with people in custody, that we may potentially be able to impact the future of this type of drug trafficking organization and or cartels in California and my county, and we let them go.
And we let them go. It is tandem, human smuggling and the narcotics industry that these cartels are engaged in. And again, who is being discarded? Humans, dead migrants and children that are now being absorbed by our system.
Well, children are being poisoned to death by fentanyl across this country. And I haven't seen anybody in the Biden administration go into a funeral. Can we go to a few funerals? I said this at the very beginning of the Biden administration when they started rolling back the immigration policies. Biden and company have intentionally laid the foundation to allow human traffickers and drug traffickers to profit and prosper from human misery, suffering, and death. And the fact that it hasn't been reversed, the fact that the Border Patrol is not backed up by this administration, seems to suggest that the Biden administration is perfectly fine with this. I talked with Mark Lamb, who's a sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, and he said, can you imagine if the 50 people were dead in a shooting today? The outrage that you would be hearing and how berserk people would be on the from the other side of the aisle on the left. And he also pointed out, he said, horrible, 50 people dead in the back of this tractor trailer. He said, go back and look at all the people over the last year and a half who've been found, who are in the back of U-Hauls, who are being suffocated to death by human traffickers. March of this year, 17 adults, 1 unaccompanied child found crammed in the back of an unventilated U-Haul. Same month, 16 migrants, including a child, inside a tractor trailer in northeast El Paso. Last July, a migrant dead after several other migrants were found inside a U-Haul in New Mexico. Last June, 33 migrants found crammed into a U-Haul in near 100-degree heat. These deaths today, completely avoidable if somebody in Washington, in this White House, gave a flying damn.
And remember, this vice president campaigned in part on overhauling the immigration system, right? But what do we have now? A 1.5 million person waiting list. People wait 2 to 3 to up to 5 years, those that came here legally. And because of their compassionate approach, remember, they called the Trump administration cruel. They say remain in Mexico is cruel. And yet, if that were to be reversed, then the waiting list would just exponentially increase. To me, the cruelest thing is 50 migrants dead in a tractor trailer and this administration looking the other way. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.